Alright, I am back with another video, and today, this is one of my most exciting builds, at least for me, in recent memory. You see, over my extended hiatus, I finally got the opportunity to sit down and play Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Now, I know it's getting a little bit of flack at the moment for its absolute sweep of the Game Awards, or just every video game related award in general, and to be honest, it's for good reason. It's my personal game of the year. It's actually one of the best games I've ever played. It's easily in my top 3 now, as well as the fact that it just kind of invoked emotions and feelings, like, while playing the game, that I haven't felt since I was a child. Just that feeling of exploration, of figuring things out. I mean, I haven't played a proper turn-based combat game in a long time, and this game's battle system is incredible. Absolutely insane. You know, it's a mixture of skill and strategy, execution, reaction time, while also being able to use a turn-based system like you normally would, you know, to be able to think about your next move and such like that. It's just so well done. The story, the characters, everything. I'm going to stop glazing that game now, because obviously that's not what this video is about, but just so you know, if you haven't played it, play it. Now, I'm not going to be spoiling any of the game in any way. I will be talking about the mechanics of the game with this build, because obviously when I make these builds I try to recreate the characters as best I can mechanically, and I think I've done a pretty damn good job here. And today we're going to be building the game's titular protagonist, Gustave, who is an expeditioner. But the very basic plot of the game is that every year in the world of Clair Obscur, there is a woman who paints a big number on a monolith in the distance. That number has been going down from 100, and each year, the average lifespan, or the full lifespan of humans, decreases to that number. So by the time we get around to the game, Expedition 33, the total lifespan of humans is 33 years old, and anyone who reaches that age immediately dies. Now, that's not really a spoiler, you learn that within the first 10 minutes of the game, but it's still a very powerful moment that really kind of sets the tone for the whole thing, and Gustave, being an expeditioner, is one of these people who will sail away from their home city of Lumiere to go to what is known as the continent, this dangerous, beautiful land that is said to house this woman, the paintress, who is effectively killing all of the citizens of Lumiere. And he is a smart cookie. He is a very intelligent man who is able to create a device, which is his prosthetic arm, as well as a few other things, to basically give the expedition an edge, with Expedition 33 having the highest odds of success ever. So that means Gustave is not only a fighter, wielding his sword, offhand parrying dagger, and a pistol, he is also incredibly versed in machinery and tinkering. He's very good at tracking and exploring. He's just a generally intelligent, wise person. And as such, it was kind of interesting to recreate him, especially with his unique playstyle. And for Gustave in particular, I actually wanted to focus more on the base mechanics of Expedition 33 that all characters have access to, since Gustave has, you know, overall the most simple kit of all of the expeditioners, and his more advanced mechanics were quite easy to recreate, so I was able to focus on the base mechanics as well. So with this build, we're going to be able to parry, block, counterattack. We're going to be able to dodge, we'll get many attacks at a turn, we'll be able to do both ranged and melee attacks with his sword and pistol. We're also going to be able to cast some minor spells, but they're not really meant to be spells, they're kind of just meant to be like extensions of the base mechanics. And then finally, we're going to get Gustave's unique ability, Overcharge. Wherever the course of a fight, he will build up charges to unleash a devastating attack with a certain skill. I'll talk about that more as we get further into the video, but yeah, I really hope you enjoy this one. I really wanted to try and capture Gustave as best as I could, and I think you guys will agree that this is probably one of the closest ways you could do it. I know some of you will disagree with maybe my subclasses choices here, because you'll see, but otherwise, I think this one is really fun, and I'd be more than happy to do those who come after, you know, the rest of the characters of Expedition 33 in the future, if people want to see that. But I really wanted to do Gustave just because he is pretty much my, I would say, my second favourite character in that game. He's just absolutely amazing, and again, he's a great, like, kind of base. He's a great kind of, you know, foundation to work on for building the rest of the cast. So, without further ado, let's get into the build. Gustave is a human, obviously, so I've gone with human today. Although, to be honest, this is probably the worst choice. It's nice to have an extra skill to be proficient in with human versatility, as it does allow us to be a bit more of a party face, because we'll be able to take persuasion in a minute. So that's probably like the best reason to use it, because as you can see, we are starting off with fighter. But otherwise, I would say you probably want to play a high elf or a high half-elf, and I'll explain a bit more later, but that starting cantrip is going to be quite important for the build, and you may want to get it sooner. So if you're playing this game and you don't care about him being a human, make him a half-elf, a high half-elf, and pick up that cantrip right away. Otherwise, I'm going for as accurate as possible here, so we're playing as a human. As I've already stated, our starting class for today is going to be Fighter. This is going to give us access to all armor, which we are going to be using a mixture of various armor classes, and we're also going to be wanting all martial weapon proficiency as well, because there are a couple of things we're going to want to use. And overall, it's also going to give us Constitution saving throw proficiency, which is going to be great, as we will have a couple of decent concentration spells that we are going to be focusing on throughout a fight, as well as just giving us a better base HP score. By the time this build is done, you're probably going to come out of this with around 90 to 110 HP, so overall you'd be quite tanky as a frontliner as well, being able to protect your allies in battle. But importantly, at level 1 of Fighter, we're going to be getting Second Wind. Gustave has the ability to heal himself through an ability called Recovery. So Second Wind is basically our version of that. Obviously, it's a bit of a minor heal. As such, maybe you definitely still want to have someone who's a dedicated healer in the party for sure, but otherwise, Second Wind is going to be a nice thing to use in a pinch, just a quick bonus action heal. So yeah, overall, I think that works pretty well for us. Moving on to our fighting style, you've got a couple of options here. You can either go with archery for the better ranged attacks. Perhaps if you want to take sharpshooter later in the build, you kind of have a free feat later on for you to pick from, so archery could be worth it. If you don't want to go with like the kind of sword and dagger thing that I'm going to have going on, because he does kind of have a parrying dagger in some of his animations, you definitely might want to go with dueling to give yourself a bit more damage, or great weapon fighting, entirely up to you, because otherwise you're just going to be wielding a longsword, so either of those will work. Could also lead to great weapon master later, but in my testing, because again, wanted to be as accurate as possible, I wanted to have his offhand kind of weapon, because it is kind of part of his overall identity, and he does have a parrying dagger, kind of in a way in some of his animations, or just a dagger in general in the offhand. So we're going to go with 2-weapon fighting here. This is going to allow us to attack with our bonus action and still get the full damage as if it was a main weapon by adding our ability modifier. But again, really, you can kind of pick any of these. Defense is good, dueling's good, great weapon fighting is good. The only one that you wouldn't really pick here is protection, because we don't use a shield. So honestly, this is kind of a free choice depending on how you want to play this character. Our background is Sage, obviously. As I explained, Gustave is a very smart individual who sought a lot of knowledge. He did research on the previous expeditions, because obviously each expedition kind of went out before Expedition 33. There's like Expeditions 34 to like basically 100, or 0 if you pay attention to the lore. And he basically studied all of them. He's all about collecting knowledge and lore to give his expedition the highest fighting chance. So I felt like Sage made the most sense. This gives us access to Arcana and History. If we kind of treat Arcana as like our science skill, magic science, and History being obvious, I think this was the most appropriate thing, and accruing more knowledge will give you inspiration, so I mean, come on. Sage was a no-brainer. Now, on to the ability scores, which aren't optimized at all. Dexterity is our most important thing, as it is going to be our attacking modifier for all of our weapons, and it's going to heavily affect our AC, so we definitely want Dexterity to be our highest stat. Now, the rest is a bit of a weird spread when it comes to my build. Constitution is at 14, you can start with this higher if you like, but I did really want our mental stats to be at least serviceable. Intelligence I've got at 14, because obviously, like I say, Gustave is smart, and I want him to be good at intelligence checks. And also, this means if you want to go with Eldritch Knight in this build, you could maybe swap some skills around, maybe put that to 16, and you'd have a decent spellcasting score. But otherwise, I'm quite happy for it to just be 14 for the skill proficiency checks and all that. Wisdom and Charisma both at 12 for the same wisdom. For the same wisdom? Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words a bit. For the same reason. I didn't want either of them to be too low, so we've got Wisdom at 12 and Charisma at 12 to make us good at Wisdom saving throws and checks like Perception and such like that, as well as Charisma being at 12 to make us a decent party face, because again, Gustave is the leader of the party, and as such, he is the one doing a lot of the talking from time to time, and I feel like it makes sense for him to have a decent Charisma score. Now, again, with Gustave, and pretty much any sort of high-powered RPG character, really all of these stats would be a lot higher, but I feel like this is the best way we're going to get it to work out to be mechanically satisfying while also being as accurate to the character as we can be. Because realistically, Gustave's intelligence would be 20 right off the bat, and I feel like not having it at least as a 16 is kind of a slight, but honestly, it's just the best way we can kind of make our stats work out. But again, you have the opportunity to play around with this stuff. If you don't care about wisdom so much, you can dump that down and put that into other things. Really, just go for it, but I wanted to be good at intelligence, wisdom, and charisma checks, and this helps us to do that. Speaking of skill proficiencies and those checks, let's talk about our starting proficiencies. Again, because we're a sage, we get Arcana and History. For my human versatility check, I went for Persuasion, again, just helping us become a bit more of a party face. And for our fighter skills, I went with Perception and Survival. Again, we're an expeditioner. We're almost sort of a ranger light in that sense, so I wanted to have a little bit of a perception and survival thing going on here, because again, we have to survive in this unknown land. That's part of being an expeditioner, as well as the perception checks just being there because it's a good wisdom skill to have, but really insight, animal handling, even intimidation can all work here, so feel free to take your pick, but I really liked having a good spread of charisma, wisdom, and intelligence throws. So that's what I've gone for here. And that's level 1. A bit of a long and lengthy detailed explanation there, but again, it's important to understand what the character can do as I explain the mechanics. At level 2, we're going to gain access to Action Surge. Now, while this is obviously universally good just for everything we want to do, giving us an extra action, it actually plays into another one of, or I guess 2 of Gustave's skills. Gustave has a couple of attacks that allow him to do upwards of 3 to 5 hits in a single turn, which obviously in D&D and Baldur's Gate 3 we can't really do without breaking the game in every sense, but you know, I've made builds where you can do that. But Action Surge is basically like we click a button, we activate our skill, and suddenly we can do a couple more attacks. The main one that I focused on kind of representation-wise here is Lumiere Assault, which is one of the ones you start with, which is just kind of this like flurry of like kind of sword swings, which makes sense for this build. But Action Surge is going to allow you to do a few things. Cast spells, you know, make up to 4 attacks in a turn normally. You'll be able to attack with your bonus action on top of that. You can use, like, dash or whatever if you need to run away, because, you know, you should probably do that sometimes. You know, there's a couple of things like that. You know, Action Surge is just an all-around useful tool, but it does tick off some of the boxes we need to make Gustave. At Fighter level 3, we get to choose our subclass. Now, I know everyone and their mother would say, you gotta go with Eldritch Knight. Not only is it going to give you access to Shocking Grasp, which is going to allow us to use Gustave's Overcharge, which I'll briefly explain. Basically, like I said, Gustave's Overcharge allows you to build up some charges and then attack, using a powerful attack, but that attack is actually using his prosthetic arm to discharge a large amount of lightning damage in a melee attack, so it's basically a very high power Shocking Grasp, and the goal of this build is to make a high power Shocking Grasp. So you'd think in order to get Shocking Grasp we'd have to take Eldritch Knight, right? Well, no. While taking Eldritch Knight would be great, especially if you bumped up your intelligence a bit more, which again, makes sense for this build, you gain access to things like Booming Blade as well, yada yada, just like extra damage on your regular attacks, which would obviously push this build up. You could also grab something like your, you could grab Shield for another way to like dodge and parry and riposte, and also something like Magic Missile for basically going for a multi kind of gunshot type thing, because in the game you can kind of fire your gun as many times as you have skill points. So Magic Missile would make sense. Honestly, and even going into the expanded spell list, you probably have something here that could fit the build, like maybe Long Strider for a bit more movement speed or something like that. However, Eldritch Knight doesn't really get me what I want for this build. Like I say, I want to focus on the base mechanics of the game. We'll have ways of getting Shield and Magic Missile on this build, as well as Shocking Grasp a little bit later, in fact in our next level. The only thing we'd be missing out on is Booming Blade, which honestly we don't really need, as it's not really a thing that Gustave would have in my opinion. He's not really a thunder guy, he's more of a lightning guy, so honestly I'm happy to skip it here. But again, if you picked a high half-elf for this build, and you got Shocking Grasp at the start, or maybe you got Booming Blade at the start and you're just going to get Shocking Grasp the way I'm going to get it in a minute, you know, you have a bit more freedom there. If you want to go with Eldritch Knight, you absolutely could, but I really think Battlemaster is the better choice here. Battlemaster is going to give you access to maneuvers, which are more about using your weapons, which again is kind of more what Gustave is about. Again, he uses his weapons more than anything, his gun and all that, and his sword. So, and the fact that the maneuvers can affect both our melee and ranged attacks makes it feel more in line with what Gustave is capable of. And it's going to get us some of the key mechanics of Expedition 33 that are integral to the gameplay style. The biggest one being riposte. One of the most satisfying things you could do in a battle in Clair Obscur is the ability to land all of your parries so you get a powerful counter attack. And riposte is as close as we're going to get to this. When a hostile creature misses you with a melee attack, you may expend a superiority die to retaliate with a powerful strike that deals an additional 1d8 damage. So, by dodging your opponent's attacks, you can spend your reaction and a superiority die to counter attack as if you parried them. So again, one of the biggest mechanics of the game replicated in Baldur's Gate. Next up, though, we can also go for evasive footwork, which may seem redundant if we've got something like riposte, because we mainly want to be, you know, missing and then retaliating, but evasive footwork does actually help us here. There is a dodge mechanic as well in Expedition 33, where rather than parrying, you instead try to dodge. Dodging has a larger window of success than parrying, so it's less risky to go for, and you avoid all damage if you manage to do so, but you don't get the counterattack, so it's kind of a trade, it's a risk-reward system overall. However, we get to cheat that system a little bit. Evasive footwork does not cost a resource, meaning that we can just click this, all it's going to take up is a combat superiority die, but we're still going to have our action, bonus action, and reaction, and it will impose disadvantage on melee attacks against us for that round. So basically, we impose disadvantage against us, which means we have a higher chance for our opponents to miss, which means we're able to riposte them. So it's like we get dodge and parry in the same kind of like thing. It is a bit resource intensive using 2 combat superiority die, but it does work to get us 2 of the essential mechanics that are the defensive mechanics of the game. Now, for your final maneuver at this level, we're going to go with Sweeping Attack. Gustave has 2 abilities that allow him to attack all enemies in front of him, and as such, we want to be able to use Sweeping Attack to do just that. Ignore the fact that it says Force, that's a visual bug, because technically I have the Never Misser equipped right now, more on that in a bit. But basically, this allows us to do a 1d8 of damage of our weapons damage to everyone in a cone in front of us, which is basically exactly what multi-hit attacks do in Clair Obscur, because all the enemies are in front of you, basically in a cone, they're in like a line of 3. So this just allows us to hit multiple targets at once, and because we're going to be able to kind of stack up various different kind of damage riders with this build, this is actually going to be quite a potent attack for dealing with groups of enemies, so I honestly recommend taking it here, not just because it is, you know, mechanically what we need to recreate the character, but also just because it works out quite well. There are other things you can choose though, which I'll go over a bit more once we actually are able to pick those, but for now, these are our starting choices. At fighter level 4, we're going to get our first feat of the build, and this is where we're finally going to get Shocking Grasp through Spell Sniper. Spell Sniper allows me to grab Shocking Grasp without having to mess with any sort of quick multiclassing dips that are going to affect the leveling scheme of this build. I want 4 feats with this build, and this is the best way to get it. So we're just going to go for Spell Sniper here, and as well grab Shocking Grasp. And getting it this way was also quite nice because we can basically roll a critical hit on a 19 or higher with Shocking Grasp now, giving it more of a chance to be this max damage hyper-powered attack that Overcharge is in Clair Obscur. So overall, I like getting it this way the most. It also allows for the most freedom, depending on your racial choice at the start. And if you go for the high half-elf and take Booming Blade, you can still get Shocking Grasp here and follow this build exactly to the letter, but then just have a more powerful base attack as well. So otherwise, yeah, we're going to use Spell Sniper for Shocking Grasp here, just to give us a high-powered Shocking Grasp to work with. So yeah, and even at the next level as well, Shocking Grasp is going to immediately get an upgrade, so it's going to feel even better to use. At level 5, our Shocking Grasp is going to get upgraded to 2d8, as well as we're going to grab extra attack here, which is awesome. Obviously, this just gives us more attacks in a turn. We want that. Now, we can immediately grab our next feat here, but I'm starting to notice a bit of a problem with the build, and is that Overcharge is about building up charges. But at the moment, we're just Shocking Grasping around, and that's not really going to be so good. So we need to start working on our way to make Shocking Grasp more powerful, which means we actually need to take rogue levels. Some of you who are more savvy on the build-making side of this game will know where I'm going with this. For the rest of you, stay with me here. So first up, we're going to gain access to sneak attack at this level, which we are going to be able to use as our main weapon is finesse, and we actually will have a pretty consistent way of getting advantage by the time this build is done, meaning that we can go for high powered sneak attacks. We also are going to get a couple of skill proficiency and 2 expertise. Now, I definitely think you're going to want to go with Arcana and History as your 2 skill expertise here if you're going for what makes the most sense for the character, but honestly I would probably take one of those and put them into Persuasion if I was playing this as a serious playthrough. As for your other skill proficiency, it's really up to you what you want to pick here. I quite like Investigation for Gustave personally, but honestly, any of these could fit. At Rogue level 2, we're going to get one of the most important abilities for this playthrough, and that is, or this character I should say, and that is the Cunning Actions, specifically Cunning Action Dash. See? Told you should have run. But anyways, Cunning Action Dash basically is going to allow us to increase our movement speed. However, the main ability that we're getting here is the ability to dash as a bonus action. This is going to synergize with a piece of equipment later, but it's going to help make our Shocking Grasp infinitely more powerful. I'll explain in the equipment section. At Rogue level 3, we get to choose our subclass, and again, actually here, you could take Arcane Trickster, grabbing Shocking Grasp and Booming Blade that way as well. You could also grab a couple of utility spells here, you could even grab things like Shield and Magic Missile from here as well, but I'm sorry guys, I know, we're going with Thief. The thing is, we're going to need to be using our bonus action to dash pretty much every turn if we want to keep up on our overcharge mechanic, and as such, by taking Thief and getting the second bonus action, we effectively don't sacrifice anything. We get to power ourselves up and then still have a normal turn with an action and a bonus action each round. Really, Thief is just the best for, even though it's like the boring and like obvious most powerful option, it is the best choice for getting Gustave's gameplay feeling right. So overall, Thief is the way to go. At this point, we're going to jump back to Fighter to pick up our level 6 feat. And at this point, it's entirely up to you kind of what you want to choose, but I think I am going to pick up Dual Wielder here. This is going to allow us to dual wield our longsword in our main hand and our dagger in our offhand, and now we have access to our bonus action attack, meaning that now we have even more attacks in a turn. And by dual wielding those weapons, we're going to gain a +1 to our armor class. Perfect. No notes. At Fighter level 7, we're going to gain access to 2 more maneuvers, and at this point you've got a few options. Again, Gustave is the leader of the party, so things like Commander Strike and Rally would both make sense to him. Although Gustave, unlike some other characters in Clair Obscur, doesn't actually have a move that allows him to direct other allies to move. Believe it or not, I believe CL gets that. And Rally is just, it's not great. So really, you're just going to want to pick stuff that is kind of powerful. I quite liked picking up a goading attack. Gustave is very much about protecting his friends, and as such being able to kind of make yourself a bit of a tank by directing attacks back towards you, giving enemies disadvantage to attack other people in your party. I feel like goading attack just works well, you deal extra damage. I think there's not really a reason to not take this here. I also like Distracting Strike as well, allowing your allies to have advantage on their next attack rolls as well, if you want to take that instead, but I kind of like the, let's just say, storytelling of Goading Attack a bit more. However, we're going to be taking Fainting Attack instead. Now that we have our rogue levels, this allows us to spend both our action and one of our 2 bonus actions to attack with advantage and deal an extra bit of damage equal to our superiority die, in this case of 1d8. So, and this advantage obviously will trigger Sneak Attack, meaning that this attack gets even more powerful. So if you really just need to go for a big, powerful attack in a turn, you absolutely can. Which again, other than Overcharged, Gustave does have one that's more sword-based, but it's just a big, large amount of damage. So honestly, this just feels like it makes sense for the build. So I quite like Fainting Attack here. At Fighter level 8, we're going to gain access to our next feat of the build. And even though this is an extremely late ability score increase, we definitely want to bump up our dexterity here. Now we're going to go back over to Rogue and pick up yet another feat, and this is kind of your free feat for the build. Pick whatever you like here. A few options that I like here: if you decide not to go the dual wielder route, you could grab Great Weapon Master here. If you want to do more damage with your pistol, as it were, Sharpshooter works really, really nice here. In another vein, Crossbow Expert could be good if you want to incorporate your pistol attacks into your full combo at close range. You've also got things like mobile if you want more movement speed, tough if you want more HP, warcaster if you want better concentration, and the ability to use shocking grasp as an enemy is moving away from you as a reaction. That's actually a cool thing you could do here. Savage attacker for more overall damage per turn. Martial Adept if you want to take more maneuvers, but honestly I think I got all the ones that we want here. So really, it's entirely up to you what you want to pick here. Although I do think a smart choice, especially this late in the game, would be to bump up your constitution just a little bit to bring you up to 108 HP, or if you fancy it, you could take the tough feat instead, which would actually give you 120, but taking the con increase makes your concentration saving throws a little bit better, and so do your constitution saving throws. So you have to decide how good you want your concentration saves to be, and again, we do have a couple of concentration spells in this build, so really, it's up to you. I think the con increase is a bit of a safer choice overall, but it's up to you. And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is a pretty overall fighter guy. He's a fighter. You're going to be able to do a lot of damage with your weapon attacks. You're going to be able to do a lot of attacks in a turn. You'll be able to use both melee and ranged attacks. But we also do have the ability to use shocking grasp for overcharge, as well as a few more things that I'll be going over in a minute. And again, you're a fighter thief rogue. You've got all the benefits of a fighter while being able to use an extra bonus action for shenanigans. So please take advantage of said shenanigans. Now, the equipment obviously is what makes this build in a lot of ways, because it really does kind of elevate the playstyle of the character. Let me just make sure everything's set up here. There we go. The camera is not being kind. Thank you. Goodness me. Never been able to fix the camera in this game. I've never been able to do it. But anyways, so with all of this, you're going to have a much more diverse moveset than you would have with just for leveling, as a lot of this equipment adds more to the character. Now, I did originally include just using early game equipment for reasons like, I just wanted this character to be, a good right from the off, or, other reasons. So, but otherwise, I do think we're going to have a pretty solid build overall with what we've got here. So, let's talk about it. First off, Fala Aluv. Yes, I know, another very popular weapon choice, but it actually does make the most sense for Gustave, and I'll explain why. It's a longsword that uses our dexterity that we can obtain very early on in the game, which again we want, because we want to be able to use a longsword with our dexterity without having to dip into monk. So this works out quite nicely for us. Again, it's a really good weapon, +1 on performance, whatever, +1 overall enchantment, but we get Fala Aluv Melody, which is actually going to give us another one of Gustave's abilities. The Sing variation of this weapon gives us a buff to all allies that increases their attack rolls and their charisma, wisdom, and intelligence saving throws. Gustave has an ability called Powerful, which increases the damage that his allies do, which this is basically kind of the closest we're going to get to that on this build, so it's just nice to have something that is thematic of that as well. However, of course you always have the ever-popular Shriek, allowing you to deal an additional 1d4 thunder damage with any damage you do to creatures within a radius around you when you trigger the skill, and they'll have a penalty to wisdom, intelligence, and charisma saving throws. So it's basically like the opposite. Overall, pick whichever one you like to use. Sing is more accurate to the character, but Shriek is obviously the more powerful option, especially when we're going to be making so many attacks in a turn. Next up though, for our offhand weapon, this is a late game weapon, but I have an early game option as well. We have the Gleam Dance Dagger. This is just here to be an offhand weapon that's going to give us an additional +1 bonus to our armor class, and still have a +2 enchantment so it can deal semi-decent damage when we attack with our offhand. This allows us to have a total AC of 20 between this and dual wielder and our dexterity, which overall is pretty damn nice, and it really does capture the kind of overall silhouette of the character in my opinion. For our early game dagger option though, the Hunter's Dagger is basically the only real good one, this or the what's it called, the Ritual Dagger. Basically, the Hunter's Dagger I kind of like a bit more though. Basically, on a hit, the target must succeed a DC 13 con save or become ruptured, which means they'll take a bit of piercing damage when they move. It's kind of like Booming Blade Light. Right, moving on to our ranged weapon of choice. I did hint at it earlier in the video, but of course we're using the Never Misser. Basically, this is a force damage dealing only kind of hand crossbow, which is going to be super good for us, as force damage allows us to bypass a lot of things. In my opinion, like resistances, it is in my opinion the best hand crossbow in the game, and it also comes with a usage of magic missile cast at level 3 once per short rest. This can be our multi-shot that a lot of people do in the game. That's kind of a strategy, is just to fire your gun as many times in a turn as you can. But it does a pretty decent chunk of damage as well, which is really, really nice. So it's a good thing to have. And obviously it synergizes with the Shriek ability from Valor Aloof, because each hit of magic missile will trigger the extra damage, so, you know, that works for us. So yeah, Never Miss just fits perfectly as Gustave's pistol in this game, in my opinion. Right, moving on to the Grimskull Helm as our headpiece of choice. This means that critical hits cannot land against us, and we have a bit of resistance to fire damage. Those two aren't as important, although being a frontliner, critical hit immunity is nice. The main thing I want from this, though, is Hunter's Mark. I wasn't kidding about the Ranger Light thing. Once per long rest, we can cast Hunter's Mark, which will allow us to deal a bit of extra slashing damage. Gustave has an ability to inflict what is called the Mark status condition, which allows you to deal your next attack in that game to deal double damage, where in this game, we're just doing it as a bit of extra slashing damage. It's Hunter's Mark, so, you know, it works. Believe it or not, the actual crossbow as a base as well, if I can find it real quick, actually has Piercing Shot, which inflicts gaping wounds, which actually allows you to deal extra damage with your attacks as well, so you can actually kind of get like a double mark thing going if you kind of stack these up, which I think is kind of fun. But yeah, I was able to get the mark mechanic in this game as well, which I think is kind of fun. No cloak for this build is required, but you can take anyone that you like as you feel like it. The displacement row cloak or the cloak that gives, what is it, the cloak of protection? Yeah, would both work really good here. Now, for our late-game armor, the elegant studded leather makes the most sense in my opinion. I also think it kind of looks quite good as a Gustave kind of armor piece, if you're not looking to use modded clothing like I am here. But this is going to give us a +2 bonus to our initiative rolls, which is great for our high dexterity. Advantage on stealth checks, not something I'm really focusing on this build, but also the ability to use shield once per short rest. And again, I'm just treating that as an extension of the parry/dodge mechanic, where we're just able to have a higher chance to dodge. However, for the early game, feel free to pick up the Jolty Vest. You'll take 1 less slashing damage, and when the wearer takes damage while having lightning charges, the attacker must succeed a dex save or become shocked, which means they cannot take reactions, and has disadvantage on ability checks and saving throws using dexterity. Now, we are going to be getting lightning charges in this build, more on that in just a second. For your late game glove option, the quick spell gloves, once per short rest, allow you to use a cantrip as a bonus action instead of an action. This means that if you really have an opportunity to go for a high powered turn, maybe where you use things like Action Surge, but you also want to use like 2 extra attacks, you can actually quickly toggle this on and then use your Shocking Grasp as a bonus action after you dash, so you could go like for 4 attacks in a turn and then finish with Overcharge. It's actually a really, really fun concept, so feel free to play around with this a little bit, although it is slightly limited because it's only once per short rest. However, in the early game, feel free to grab the Gloves of Archery to allow your hand crossbow attacks to deal an additional 2 damage per hit, which is very nice. Now, one of the most important pieces of equipment in this build, we have the Speedy Light Feat. This was the best consistent way to be able to build up lightning charges on this character. When the wearer dashes or takes a similar action during combat, they gain 3 lightning charges. I'll explain lightning charges in a bit more detail. While you have lightning charges on you, you have a +1 bonus to attack rolls and deal an additional 1 lightning damage. Essentially, your weapon will become a +1 weapon, and in our case, our +1 weapon becomes a +2 weapon. And when you gain 5 charges, they are consumed the next time you deal damage, allowing you to deal an additional 1d8 lightning damage. So the idea is that you dash as a bonus action on your first turn, do a bunch of attacks, and because you lose a charge per turn, on your next turn you'll have 2, so you dash, you're able to get 5 charges, and then you hit for a Shocking Grasp, dealing a full damage overcharge, dealing 4d8 lightning damage with a cantrip. Stacking with some other damage bonuses that we have, like Valor Aloof, Shriek, and other stuff, you're just going to be able to do a damn big amount of damage, especially if you hit that higher chance to crit, which is insane. It does a lot of damage. Trust me. It's a very, very fun thing to use. If you have a companion in your party that can make enemies wet as well, they will take double damage from this, so that could be extremely fun as well. So feel free to play with this a bit. There are technically other ways to get lightning charges as well. I actually originally considered making Gustave a Way of the Four Elements monk, because they have Touch of the Storm, which is a slightly more powerful version of Shocking Grasp, but uses their key points. But seeing Gustave punching things didn't really sit right with me personally, so I think the Speedy Light feat is a bit better. Now, we can make our overcharge even more powerful with the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation. Whenever one of your cantrips deals, in our case, lightning damage, we add our spellcasting modifier to the damage dealt. Because our both of our classes that we take actually have intelligence as their spellcasting modifier, we're going to be adding a +2 to all of the damage we deal with Shocking Grasp. Now, if you were playing a character that specced more into intelligence, this would get even stronger, but otherwise, this is just a nice little damage boost, so we're going to take that here. Speaking of getting a damage boost, we can now also use our Ring of Arcane Synergy to allow us to, whenever we use our Shocking Grasp Overcharge, we gain Arcane Synergy, adding additional damage to all of our weapon attacks, equal to our spellcasting modifier. The more I think about it, there is a pretty hard case for actually increasing your intelligence a bit higher here, but, you know, again, you can play around with the stats as you see fit. Now, our final ring slot here is a completely free slot. You can put whatever you like here. However, I've gone with Till Death Do Us Part, which is going to give you Beacon of Hope. Your allies will regain the maximum amount of hit points possible when healed, and they also have advantage on Wisdom saving throws and Death saving throws. Because, you know, I'm not really going to say anything here, but I think the people who have played Expedition 33 will understand why I went with this. Let's just say it's for those who come after. Anyways, that is the build mechanically. Overall, like I said, you've got a pretty solid setup here. I'll very quickly go over the cosmetic stuff as well. As always, Fear Tailor's Camp Clothing mod is in play here, allowing us to do a bit of transmog. First up, we've got the Ringmail Armour +1 here, as well as the Leather Boots 2, alongside the Metallic Gloves, all from the same mod, to give us this overall look, combined with the Besheba die from Faerun Colours. Both of these mods are available on consoles, so all players have access to these, giving us this nice, kind of purpley black and gold colour scheme, which matches the colour scheme of the Expeditionary uniforms. As I said, you could also just go for the elegant studded leather here, as I do think it does still kind of work, so it's down to personal preference. However, you will need a different dye for the boots to make them fully black, which is why I went with the owl dye from the same mods. But yeah, that is the build, and as I said, I think I've done a pretty damn good job of recreating Gustave as accurately as possible. You get the parries and deflects and counterattacks, you get the ability to dodge, you get the ability to attack multiple enemies, focus on single ones, do big damage. I even got the bloody overcharge mechanic as best I could, and all of this without a spellcasting class. Come on, that's kind of impressive. Not even a wizard did. Now, I did consider Battlemaster Bladesinger at one point, but I just like, nah, Bladesinger just doesn't feel right to me. Although it would be way more powerful. So again, feel free to play around with this, but I kind of wanted to avoid the magic classes because that just kind of felt better for Gustave. And again, if I want to have a lot of diversity, if I do the rest of the Expedition 33 cast, we have characters that are clearly spellcasters, like Lune, who is basically just going to be like a bard sorcerer, probably, considering her thing. CL, who I guess would have to be probably like a cleric of some kind, maybe like Twilight? I'll have to see. Let me look into that one a bit more. We've got, and then we've obviously got someone else who I think could be a very interesting build as well. Well, those of you who played the game will know. I won't say anything more because I want some of my more interesting build ideas to be a surprise. But yeah, as I said, I'm really, really happy with this one. Is it the most powerful build I've ever made? No. It's very, very gimmicky. Obviously, this lightning charge into Shocking Grasp strategy, as cool as it is, and as effective as it can be, it is still a gimmick. And in reality, I suppose if most people just wanted to go for big lightning damage attack that's slightly less accurate, I mean, you could just build Eldritch Knight, Wizard, whatever, Shocking, not just use Shocking Grasp, but also use things like Lightning Bolt and such like that. I mean, there are obviously other ways to do it, but this is my way. And this is my way that feels, in my opinion, the best way to do it. But yeah, that is going to do it for me. I've rambled on long enough. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.